she ended up posing naked for me.
Range Wilson.
It was the spring of 2003 in Colorado Springs, and despite my continued involvement with Yvonne, I had not given up hope on finding a woman of my own. The good news is there was no shortage of options. But would I be able to find anything meaningful, or would it just be a series of adventures? Not that there's anything wrong with adventures. Let's start with one that involved a whole bunch of martinis. One evening, I decided to head out to a martini bar called 15C, which is still there today. This place is set up like a speakeasy. The entrance is an unmarked door on a side alley. You have to knock on the door and hope somebody inside decides to let you in. Once you are inside, the place is luxurious, with wood paneling everywhere, artwork on the walls, and seats and benches covered in red velvet. I liked to go there from time to time because it reminded me of my more upscale days as a Silicon Valley executive. That night, it did not take me long to attract the attention of a young woman named Jessica. She invited me over to her table, and I had a nice time chatting with her and her friends. Eventually, they decided they wanted to head over to another martini bar called the Ritz Grill, which is also still there today. They invited me along, and I was happy to join them. The Ritz Grill has a dance floor, and I had a great time with Jessica and two of her female friends, dancing, drinking, and talking. We ended up shutting the place down, and I felt like I could have invited any of the three along for some additional fun. But I decided that Jessica should take priority because she invited me over to start with. So I walked her back to her car, we made out for a while, and then she decided she did not want to go any further that night. But we exchanged phone numbers and I agreed to call her the next day. And that brings up a situation I have faced countless times. This situation occurs when I go out to escape the pressures of daily life, end up having a great time with a lady, but then wake up the next morning with all of those pressures still there. With a long to-do list, with multiple creative projects demanding my attention, and with the beer goggles, or in this case the martini goggles, off, a relationship looks much less appealing than it did the night before. In Jessica's case, at least I called her the next day, which I don't always do. We even set up a date for the next weekend. But I ended up canceling, and that was the end of that. I felt bad, but what could I do? I did not want to string her along just in the hopes of getting some sex. Despite what you might think if you have been watching my series of life videos, sex is not very high on my priority list. I do not want to feel like I'm jumping through a bunch of hoops just for that. I'd rather avoid that situation completely. But another situation in which I keep finding myself involves women who are much younger than me. Carly was a receptionist at World Gym when I was still working there. She was interested in acting and modeling, and because I was interested in screenwriting and photography, we had a fair amount in common to talk about. I invited her out to dinner one night, and we had a very nice time at a local steakhouse. But Carly was only 19 years old. At the time I was 36, and that's already a big age difference. Today, it's far worse. I'm 49, and I'm still getting plenty of attention from 18 and 19-year-olds. Can that type of relationship ever work? I know it seems to be working for several of my friends who are my age or even older, but I can never seem to decide. Part of me says, at your age, if a teenager wants to spend quality time with you, that makes you a stud. Another part of me says, at your age, if a teenager wants to spend quality time with you, that makes you a creep. I can't seem to decide. Stud or creep? I don't know. What's your opinion? Let me know in the comments below. I'd actually like to hear your input. Anyway, in Carly's case, I decided there was no real basis for an ongoing relationship. In addition to our age difference, she was living with another guy. She made it clear that she was willing to get physical outside that relationship, but like I said, sex has never been all that big a priority for me. But Carly and I stayed in touch, and it turns out she ended up posing naked for me for a photo shoot. I'll share that story in an upcoming video. In the meantime, I managed to get into another situation where the lady in question was living with somebody else. Her name was April, and I met her at the talk show Gone Bad. I called her randomly one evening, and it turned out she was all dressed up because she had just finished an audition. I told her to stay dressed up, and I put on some nice clothes and met her over at the Broadmoor. We had a very nice dinner, one thing led to another, and then we ended up making out at the bar afterwards. She invited me back to her place to continue the festivities. We ended up knocking it out twice. The next morning, as I was getting ready to leave, she asked me to wait until she could check to see if any of her neighbors were outside. That struck me as a little strange, and I asked her why. She said that she was married to an army soldier who had just left for Iraq the day before. Now, I don't worry all that much about conventional morality, but this one bothered me. This guy had just shipped out to a hellhole halfway across the world, fighting for our country, and the very same night I was boning his wife? That was just too much for me. I made it clear to April that I was not interested in continuing that relationship. Instead, I continued my quest for a meaningful relationship elsewhere. Tune in next time to find out what happened when I spent some quality time with both a lesbian and a video vixen. Until then, like, comment, share, and/or subscribe. My name is Range Wilson, and I'll see you next time.